with any frontier technology, a lot of the work, the early work, is education, right? So last year, you presented at Philippine Blockchain Week 2022, and you were talking about the infinite possibilities of the metaverse. So I found it really interesting how you likened the inflection point that we're at today with the metaverse to the internet during the 90s, right? So what you mentioned specifically was how between 1994 and 1995, Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, went from being an internet skeptic to being a total champion. And that was a $1 trillion pivot, essentially. So a lot of people tuning into this year's Philippine Blockchain Week are business leaders themselves, looking to do their own pivot to the metaverse. So, Kate, how do you explain to them the opportunity that lies ahead of them?
Yeah, Santiago, there's a big shift when it comes to the metaverse, the Web3, the blockchain in the last 2 years, right? When I did a talk that was 2021, it was the peak of the metaverse. Everyone's talking about it, everyone's excited about it. There's a little bit of shift that was happening in the last 2 years. Definitely, just like any emerging technology, it's up and down. It's like a heart rate, right? And so this is definitely not the perfect time. It's not at the best the height of Web3. There's a decline of mentioning about it in the West, and project really declining. So it's not in a good space at this moment. But I think just like the internet, it took us how many years to build the internet, right? So I would say for entrepreneurs, it's really something that you need to pay attention to stay relevant. It might not be happening in the next 5 years, but definitely I would say, based on talking to thought leaders and experts in the field, we're about 8 to 10 years out before it's full on. But it could speed up with AI, which is thank God to ChatGPT, right? With 100 million users in the span of 30 days. The speed of adoption has shrunk to zero. So, and we've seen that with Threads. It took them 7 days to have 100 million of users, acquisition. So that's something that we can think of. It is a little bit not the top priority in the tech world right now. Definitely Web3 get a little bit covered with AI and the ChatGPT, generative AI, all of that. But it's really something that we need to pay attention as an entrepreneur, even C-suites. You don't totally have to remove that as part of your strategy, but have it there, like a pocket of reserve strategy. It's there.
Yeah, and so you mentioned in your last talk that this is very much like the internet boom, the internet boom in the 90s. I mean, very similarly, there was that dot-com bubble that burst. So a lot of people flooding into the space, innovating in the space. It got called, and then those who kind of survived through it made it really big, right? So I mean, very similarly, it's if we're looking at the same thing, and it seems like we are, there are a lot of people experimenting right now, going in many different directions, and eventually we're going to figure out which are the more lucrative directions to be going through, right? So if we're in a downturn, I mean, every new movement has experienced these kinds of ups and downs, like you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very hard to grasp the consumer side of Web3 and the metaverse and blockchain. But what I'm seeing right now in the West, a lot of build out in the infrastructure, in the VR and XR, I think they're winning in that department, but it's not really something that us in the Philippines can really, we don't have the massive infrastructure to utilize that or, really use that technology. But when it comes to who's winning and who's ahead in the part of the Web3 space, it's the XR and the VR, really utilizing it in health and movies, entertainment. So it's hard to quantify that here in the Philippines.
Yeah. So for context here, taking a step back here, looking at your career, Kate, you've impacted over 8 million entrepreneurs through your community building efforts, right? So these are organic groups on platforms like Clubhouse, participants in your virtual summits, and in ventures where you serve as an advisor. So many ventures today are hoping to build communities behind their projects. You mentioned earlier the importance of having a metaverse strategy. So I'd like to talk about the tools or strategies that are available today to build communities at scale behind these ventures. So some years ago, you launched your first venture, an e-commerce beauty business, right? And you scaled that to $1 million in revenue within a year. So just wanted to ask, if you were to launch that same business today, given what you know now about the opportunities of the metaverse, the need for a metaverse strategy, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I do that in e-commerce. When it comes to Lazada, the rise of TikTok, social selling right now, it's definitely something that you can tap in the Philippines. I would say utilize influencers to sell your product. It can be done. It really is honing into launch a product that's really solving a problem, make it affordable for everyone in the beginning, so it's not really taking a lot of your capital, and do partnership, collaborate with other influencers or other people that has done exactly the same thing. So that's the key, and you can do it. When it comes to the metaverse in the immersive world, selling digital assets might be something that you can do, even though it's really difficult to do it right now. It's with the kind of decline of NFT as we all see it. You can have maybe a digital twin of your product, which you can play around. But I think the physical product at this point of launching it in an e-commerce world is something that you can do at this point and still can win.
When I look at a lot of the businesses that are trying to launch as Web3 first, a lot of the early work is in how can I build a community around my product or my service, and it's I mean, you look at groups like YGG, right? Their product is the community at this point, right? So again, this is your area of expertise. I'm just curious, how do you go about building communities on Web3?
You as a leader, how to build the community successfully and make it really stick and create like a real loyal community member. You really have to start with what's your why, making sure you have a core values intact. Everyone has to embrace that and have the right team to ride the community. But it really takes a lot of you as a leader to build a successful community. I built a community in the last 3 years, and we're still friends at this point. We do business, we still travel the world, we meet up, we still have dinner, have some talk, and it's hard to replicate that. For you to build a successful community, you really need to treat it as a business. It's a startup where you need to have the team. You need to have, you as a leader really needs a lot of skill sets, because if you think about it, Santiago, you have members that are so diverse, very different age gap, different generation, everyone has different opinion. How are you going to make them happy and making sure all their voices are heard? And if you don't know that as a leader, you don't have any blueprint on how to be a good leader, you're going to fail, right? There's a lot of community right there. They're all bought. They're all fake, and then it's their inflated numbers. You can tell if you launch something, if they're gonna, stick. Maybe they'll buy one time, but let's talk about loyalty. How you're gonna develop that? So that really takes a lot from you as a leader. How you're gonna make sure have that balance of the business side of things and making sure everyone's feel heard, celebrated, and embraced. And that's not even a big corporation can do that successfully. Think about a community that's so new and a lot of things you have to navigate. So kudos to someone who can build a successful community that's people are still there after a heartache of a product are not doing well, right? Because people will rally if everyone's making money, but it's going to turn sour right away when people are losing money. So we've seen that in a lot of communities in a Web 3.0 space. So it really takes a lot more than money. So that's why I said for you to run a successful community, you have to be very clear of your why. And the why has to be bigger than making money. It has to be a commonality, like this is what I believe in, this is what I'm passionate about. That even if I lose money, I'm still going to embrace the community because I really believe the why we created this community. I think everyone has to figure that out.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned that to this day, the community that you've built, a lot of you are very, very still connected, hyper connected, having dinner together. at this point, especially as you keep mentioning, we're at this downturn. It's these very personal grassroots communities that survive, as opposed to
Absolutely.
maybe inorganic communities that maybe we see prevalent amongst, let's say, larger corporations. So it sounds like this is really where collaboration comes in, where corporations have to work together with grassroots communities, or maybe I'll call it industry leaders need to work with people at the front lines in order to really mobilize a community.
Yeah,
Am
absolutely.
I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't understand in the next few years, really community is the future of brands. We all know, Facebook, it's so hard to do ads. It's so expensive to acquire a customer. It's so hard for people to stick into one. When you have a community, normally the community, we either use Discord or WhatsApp. I still have a community on WhatsApp and we still talk about it, people in and out, but I really do think that's how you can promote your brand in the next few years. Community is really the future of brands.
So it's clear then that at the heart of any movement is a robust and engaged community. And that's especially true for Web3 or any company that's hoping to innovate in Web3. And we also know that communities are built on shared experiences, right? So they thrive when there are shared spaces to gather and exchange ideas. So 2 years ago, Kate, you founded Metaverse XYZ to build immersive event experiences for clients, largely in the tech industry, as I understand. So what does it mean to mount an event for a Web3 community versus, say, a more traditional sort of event?
The events in Web3, it's super, super niche. So, the people that would come and join is like they're curious about it, right? And so it's been fun. I did the Web3 LA in 2021. We've helped and launched project in the Hollywood space, like some charity NFTs. So it's been really fun. Web3, events is super curated. But it's been what I've noticed, it's the same people. And so we really need to we all wanting to have that mass adoption, which is everyone's struggling right now to capture that. But then the Philippine environment is very different than in the West or in the Europe region. So I think here it's people are way more, as Filipino, we're really excited about what's the new thing. So there's some openness compared to other cultures. So it's really more fun to do an event here in Asia than the other parts of the world, to be honest. Filipinos, we tend to embrace what's cool, what's new, and okay, I'm excited to learn. So that's what I've been finding.
So I want to circle back to the Philippine context in a second. But speaking of celebrating communities, you're the head this year of the Philippine Block Awards. Could you tell me a bit about that? What exactly are the Block Awards, and what are we looking to expect from this year?
Yes, super excited. The Block Awards will be happening on the 22nd of September. It will be 100 people. We have an amazing host, RJ Ledesma. We have a keynote, Mark Joyner. He's like the king of the internet. He actually created the Pixel, the Pixel and ebook. He created that. So very excited to have him as keynote. Well, of course, the vision and mission of Block Awards is highlighting Filipinos that really create amazing project that's solving problems, real world problems. So very excited. We're going to be awarding 13 different individuals, both from private and the government side. So very excited. So we'd love to invite everyone to be part of it.
Fantastic. So actually, I really want to appreciate I really want to thank you, and I really appreciate you sharing your time with me today. So maybe I'd like to wrap on a final question here. Part of this year's Philippine Blockchain Week is this thrust towards positioning the Philippines as the blockchain capital of Asia. So you were already talking about what makes the Filipino context unique, the Filipino people unique, and why maybe a young tech-savvy population might be able to really make a bid for this. But a lot of this claim is rooted in our incredibly robust grassroots Web3 communities, right? So from your perspective, is the Philippines well positioned to claim that global leadership role in blockchain?
Yes, absolutely. With the help of the government, of course, right? The regulation side of things, because you can have a lot of community leaders or Web3, enthusiasts wanting to drop something like really good project. But if you don't have any support of the government, then it's going to be very hard to position yourself as a Web3 capital or blockchain capital in Asia. But what I'm seeing is the government's very keen into like open hearing into a lot of some innovations or community or any project that we're getting. So it seems like it's going to happen that way. Definitely that comes with private, public, and government all in ones. How are we going to have that merge into everyone's embracing like, hey, let's work together is the key.
You mentioned public, private, looking at the Blockchain Council of the Philippines, looking at the grassroots communities, looking at the Philippine Blockchain Week and the group that's been gathered around the table here, it does look like it's a very representative group. But maybe a final question from your perspective, looking at the communities in the US, in the Philippines, is there anything missing still amongst the stakeholders that you see? Like, who do you feel needs to be brought into the table in order to really make a concerted effort towards positioning the Philippines as a global leader?
Wow, very good question there, Santiago. That's, you just throw that out of left field. I really do think we need to be very open with or easy access to funding when it comes to supporting project in a Web3 space or even a tech world, in the tech space in the Philippines. And we really need to be open to bringing thought leaders or a mindset leaders that can shape our young entrepreneurs in the Philippines tech world. What I'm finding from analyzing and then being immersed into the community is we have a lot of young entrepreneurs that are really wanting to do big things, right? Which is, I love that hungriness that they want to do, solve really problems. But we are lacking in the mindset and the global thinking of things when it comes to running a business, and easy access to funding as well is needed. So those two, because you have a very ambitious young Filipino entrepreneurs, but they need to have a mentor to guide them how to scale their project and make it global. That's the missing piece. And then the money piece of government or PE or VC monies that's really helping them scale it to the next level. I think those are the key things. And of course, with the government regulations and support is needed on top of that, then we're going to have a good secret sauce.
Okay, amazing. So, and hopefully with the Block Awards, we have the opportunity to highlight more of these voices, these mindset leaders, and attract eventually, maybe hopefully very soon, attract more robust capital to help grow this community.
Absolutely.